They don't want to think it through.
Just
And that's why,
speed it up.
that's why site visits are so important.
It's supposed to be nice.
Ask that you come to a meeting.
What?
We're gonna ask you to come. Come this week. We're gonna have a actually, it's probably not till next week.
Well, people have been calling me like crazy about coming to your meeting this week. Roads. They've been getting calls. I said, I tell them they have a meeting. I don't know if when they let public
Yeah,
speak. But
that's every year. That's not a big deal.
you talking about the. What?
Yeah.
The one thing you might get them on is we have. See, that's a problem. I hate ordinances and I like ordinances and zoning, but see, they're where they putting water, where they putting their poop.
Legislation.
Where they putting their
Legislation. to take care of this.
poop. What?
There's already legislation.
Hello. Good. Yeah, but what is it though? Oh, yes, of course, yeah. Yeah, because all I hear is everybody else talking right now, but yeah, no, I love these conversations because I had a gal call me on that too.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Oh, that was very helpful. Yeah, nice to see you again too.
So I want to ask you something. So we're gonna maybe do a cleanup of the ditches.
Yep.
Because it's garbage city, because there's no grass right now.
Thank you very much.
I didn't see
That's
any.
Cal did it. Thank you.
We did ourselves, I've done before, but we're gonna have a couple pickup lines.
You guys are doing it yourself, you and
Neighbors, whatever.
neighbors, okay? Yeah.
I'm not asking, I just think, is that's.
Okay.
Oh, I haven't got an agenda together.
I know, it's always, you can't stop, people are stupid. I know. I'm not blaming the township, you can't sit up and babysit. And they clean out,
I know it is.
clean out a house in
And you and
town,
I
and they
talked
just.
about this before. Just throwing them down in here. That's somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah. You're hard on me.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to catch up
Somebody make a big.
at 3:30 in the
Think
morning,
about
right?
it.
Yeah. And they're smart enough, I got a couple with the mail.
That's nice.
Morning, Jan. Do that anymore,
No.
they must
Hi,
talk.
Jan.
Give a table.
Yeah.
Give a table, Gussie.
Anyway, that's a good discussion. I'll start looking through.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. As we're calling the meeting to order, remind everybody here that we do have people that are called in and watching remotely. So if you need to speak, make sure you speak in the microphone so everybody can hear. And with that, we'll call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start, just a couple of announcements. Those of you that have been around the county business for a while, we lost another colleague, retired a few years ago, George Larson. I think he was on the Iowa County Board for 22 years, and many of us sat on committees with him over the years. I always said George was like that commercial when E.F. Hutton spoke. You know, everybody listened. Not that he was always right, but people listened. He just had that booming voice. Anyway, And Josh Moore has some illness in his family, so let's keep Josh and his family in our prayers. Public forum. Does anybody wish to speak on behalf of the public? Okay, go ahead.
You're muted. I've said you're muted more times in the past year.
Okay,
Oh, there we go.
okay, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I'm Terry Croop from Arlone Township.
Yep.
Excuse me, everyone. I just had an operation and I'm kind of recovering from it. Or I would be personally at the meeting. I wanted to say there's some kind of a thing going on with Arlone Township where you're going to take over the zoning here and all that. Is that correct? Not sure I can ask questions at this time.
There's a septic ordinance that is on
yes.
the agenda.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's the reason I'm calling. I don't know. This is a pretty agricultural place here. I don't know why the township decided to do this. We're surrounded by cows and that kind of thing, and the farmers actually put the manure on the field. So, I mean, I don't know how that is. Yes, sir.
Yes, we have a public hearing and that would be the appropriate time to speak about that.
Okay, well, I will stand by here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Bye.
Fine. Is anybody else public comment? All right. With that, we'll move on to the agenda. I see no additions or corrections that have come down this way.
I'll move the agenda, Mr. Chair.
A second it.
Got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Looking for approval of the minutes of April 19th, 2022 regular county board meeting and summary for publication.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second. Motion by Lovegren, second by Waldham. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And then the minutes and board reports and correspondence, Pine County Surveyor monthly report for April. The insurance committee minutes from April 18th update will be provided or update provided at the April 19th, 2022 board meeting, and minutes provided for information only.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then we'll move on to the consent items. Consent agenda, you've had those in front of you for several days, so
I'll make a motion for this consent agenda.
all right.
I'll second.
A motion by Lovegren, second by Waldham to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now, we'll move on to the public hearing for ordinance 2022-26 on behalf of Arlone Township, regulating subsurface sewage treatment systems. and that's going to start now. We're first going to have a presentation of the ordinance.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
members of the board,
yes.
this is Caleb Anderson. I'm the Land and Resources Manager in the Planning and Zoning Office for Pine County. And I had prepared this ordinance. The county was informed by our lone township that they'd kind of taken board action to defer septic system permitting and regulation to the county. So this is something we've done in several cases where townships have made those decisions. So we expect it should be a pretty minor change in the number of permits and administrative work we do for the ordinance, just given the population of that township and the fact that we already probably do over 30 townships and cities. So it's a minor change to our workload. So it will remain within budget. I very much appreciate that the gentleman showed up on the phone to express his concerns. I think that's helpful when folks can do that. Kind of being prompted on what his concerns would be, I can speak to those. Basically, the county is required to regulate septic systems. We're required to have a permitting program to fulfill permitting or inspection obligations. We're required to have a system for reviewing existing septic systems and having compliance inspections done on those. So we're kind of fulfilling our state requirements in our septic system ordinance. Townships have the authority to adopt those same rules and enforce them themselves, and they may be as or more restrictive. So there have been townships that have elected to do that, but officially they are to be as restrictive. So this should not be a change in the rules that are that those homeowners have to play by. It'll just be a different entity kind of delivering those. And we feel that it will also, the feedback I've heard from a lot of contractors is that it's helpful when the county does it, because we work very closely with all of the septic contractors. It's a lot of the same characters, same folks working throughout the county. So we kind of develop rapport with them. They know what to expect in the inspection, how to get a hold of us. You know, if there's 20 different inspectors, that can be harder to schedule out their work. So that's one place where we feel that there's a improved service to the contractors and homeowners when we can kind of consolidate the service. But that's all I've got. I would welcome any questions.
Anybody from the board have questions? Doesn't look like the board has any at this time. So we'll open this up then, Terry, if you have your comments from the public. You still there, Terry?
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
I have a lot of trouble with the mute button here. Anyway, yeah, thanks, Caleb, for the information. I was wanting to know how present septic systems are they grandfathered in, or will they have to comply immediately? What would be the status on that? And I'll stand by for an answer if you will.
Chair, I can address them if you'd like. Otherwise, if you want to
Yes,
take any
go
other.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. The ordinance the main components of the ordinance are that if you are going to install a new septic system, you need a permit through our office, and you would need to have that system inspected and certified. So for existing systems, they are allowed to be out there if they are not compliant. If there are a few triggering events where maybe you would have to get it inspected, the most common of those are if the property goes up for sale, then a valid septic certification is required. And that's kind of a rule that the whole county plays by. If you're near a lake or river and you pull a permit, you also need to have a valid septic certification, and those are good for 3 years. So if you buy a property and it's inspected as part of that sale, then you're near a lake, so you are going to build something, and a couple years later, you might still be valid if under that certification because they're good for 3 years. And then the third one is that if you expand the home so that there's increased demand on that septic system, which could put it at risk of failure, you may be required to upgrade that system to have sufficient capacity for the more users of the household and more water usage. So, so if you just have an old septic system, unless one of these activities are taking place, there would be no requirement to have it inspected or upgraded.
So at the time of the property sale, it would have to be perk tested. The perk test is all around the land or where the present system is. Do you know that at all, Caleb? Thank you.
The present system. It would have to be documented compliant.
Okay. Well, I think, as you all know, I stand kind of with the people here. I think this will be a burden on a lot of people here. We don't have many people in this township, and they're not wealthy. So it's just another thing that's going to hit them in the budget, and that's just the way it is, I guess. But that anyway, I'm going to be listening the whole time here. But thank you for everybody's comments, Caleb, especially.
Thank you.
I'll stand by.
Yep. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, one final comment is that I think we at the county, we certainly appreciate the financial impact that septic regulation does have on homeowners. Like that's something we are well acquainted with, and we've worked very hard to create financial resources for homeowners in those positions through the low interest loan program through the county, as well as there are low income grants. So we're very cognizant of it, and your point is well taken.
Gussie?
Eileen Kirkman, Arlone Township. I have a couple of questions. About distance from a body of water, a lake or a river, a stream. What is the distance? And also, Arlone Township did not require mound systems, and many of the properties out there do not have mound systems. Would that be required? Is that a county requirement? Or does it have something to do with the soil quality of the land it's on?
Yeah, soil.
Matt, you want to take that?
Yeah. Whether it's a mound or not.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if Caleb heard the question because he wouldn't hear unless it was at a microphone for sure. Caleb, did you get the question? Are you able to hear?
I heard 90%. I think I filled in the gaps.
Okay.
Mostly.
You want to answer it or?
Yeah, I guess the soil type on that property dictates what type of septic system is required. So that's true of many communities throughout the state where historically mounds were not designed as often. As the code science and code changed over time, it's basically that you have to, a new septic system must provide 3 feet of vertical separation from the wastewater discharge to where there is periodic saturation of groundwater, so that as that water flows down through the soil column, it's interacting with the aerated soil, non-saturated soil, for treatment of pathogens and pollutants, so that the groundwater is not being contaminated. So if you have a very well-draining soil natively, a sandy soil, you may still be able to have an in-ground system. If you have a shallower water table, not as well drained, clay soil, oftentimes that's where you have to build that mound up to provide that 3 feet of separation so the wastewater is treated before it gets into the groundwater.
And the distance from the lakes and the rivers is,
Yes, 300 feet from a river, 1,000 feet from a lake, and the 100-year floodplain. Those are the areas that the county shoreland ordinance has jurisdiction. So the rules are just a little tighter, just to make sure where normally we're talking about impacting the groundwater, then there's also a higher susceptibility to impact surface water.
and we've already, that's been in place.
For sure.
And Arlone Township has been following the septic system rules. They're just at this time saying, we're tired of hiring a contractor to be our inspector. We want Pine County to do the inspections.
So when would a mound system be required? I mean, if you have no mound and who's gonna?
At the
somebody
time-
come to your house and say you gotta have a mound because
At the
I-
time you sell your property
So it's complaint driven or it is.
or a point of sale,
Driven
yes, or build a new house.
Okay.
And then a
It
sewer
is not
designer
complaint
would
driven.
come. You would hire a sewer design specialist. They would come out.
Or an addition could trigger.
Or in addition.
Yeah, an addition, if you had a 2-bedroom house and you were gonna add on and have a 5-bedroom house, that would trigger a,
Okay, for pumping then, if somebody comes out and pumps, do they have to make a report on your property then or what? Is there something that triggers an inspection?
pulling a building permit, point of sale is really what,
Only those two things.
that's what we really look for.
Thank you. Thank you,
Not
Caleb.
complaint driven.
Thank you, Matt.
Did you hear us say thank you, Caleb?
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public have any questions? Anybody from the board have any questions? We'll close the public hearing. Ask the board one more time. And if we have no more questions, we'll ask the board to consider the ordinance. Looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Ludwig. Any discussion? One last chance. If not, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay. Now we get to the real fun part. Brent Johns, front and center. Brent was here on Friday, had a very nice retirement party, Brent. It was awesome. You have a lot of friends in this community and a lot of co-workers and it was an awesome thing. So I want to thank you for your 38 years of work. And I'm sure Rod has something to say.
I'll keep it shorter than I did on Friday. How's that? I
You
spoke for a
always
while,
say
didn't
that,
I?
Rod.
Yeah, I know. And this keeps me on task. So, so Mr. Chair and members of the board, we're here to recognize our jail programmer, jail coordinator, programs coordinator Brent Johns on his retirement after nearly 39 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Pine County. And I wish to express my sincere appreciation and gratefulness for all he's done throughout our agency over the years. Brent, you want to come on up? So I'll just say something really short though. Brent started his career with the Sheriff's Office in 1983 at our old jail, working as a jailer and a part-time reserve deputy. Brent served under several sheriffs over the years and saw a lot of change. But the one thing that remained consistent over time was Brent's passion for his community and helping people and helping people. It was his passion that led him to the position he held for over 19 years as the jail programs coordinator. Over those years, Brent thrived at improving and expanding our inmate services through his jail programming. Brent has been extremely successful at culturing relationships with our local businesses and developing a work release program that's second to none. Brent has assisted countless eligible inmates in finding gainful and oftentimes life-changing employment. Brent's fostered several relationships with local volunteers and facilitators that provide inmate programming such as religion classes, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, GED courses, and various treatment programs. All this Brent did with passion for people and our jail's mission to provide those incarcerated with education, behavior management, and various program opportunities designed to improve their ability to return as productive members of society. Brent, you're an inspiration to us all in your character, your work ethic, and your dedication to serving people. It goes without saying, Brent has been very instrumental in the progressive development of our jail's culture by truly helping people. What Brent has accomplished in his almost 39 years at the Pine County Jail has established the true core values of what jail programming is all about and lays a solid foundation for all future jail programmers to aspire to for years to come. Brent, I, along with everyone in the sheriff's office, and we brought a few with us today, we wish you, I'm sorry, I lost my place now, I looked away. I, along with everyone in the sheriff's office, want to congratulate you and wish you the very best of luck in your future. Happy retirement. You've definitely earned it.
Thank you. Just a few words for me. One thing I'd like to do is thank this board and previous boards, the sheriffs I've worked under, and the jail administrators I've worked under, because they have, without fail, allowed me to go to conferences, trainings, and just lately, Zoom opportunities. And those are the things that have really allowed me to go from how the heck do we do this job to a leadership position. I've been the District 2 Sheriff's Association representative for a very long time. So I've had the opportunity to learn and take in turn, help people that are just starting out. And that's what our state association is all about, helping each other. Don't have 82 different jails reinventing the wheel. So it's really been a joy to go to these conferences, gain information, and over the last decade or so, really help other people that are getting up and running. One other comment I'd like to make is one of the things that the jail is facing these days is the mentally ill. And when I first started in '83 and they trained us, they said, you will not hold the mentally ill in jail, period. So in those days, and Matt knows, we'd take them up to Moose Lake, or we'd take them to Cambridge, or we'd take them to Mercy Hospital in Coon Rapids, wherever a bed was available. The state has basically abandoned the mentally ill in my editorial. And so now there's an expectation that the jail holds them. Okay. So this is an area where going forward, we're going to have to make some considerations. As an example, the jail that's being built in Grand Rapids, Itasca County, is actually going to have a mental health unit right in the jail. And I've talked to Rodney about that. I said, you know what? That might be a good thing to do, to send people there rather than for us to deal with the mentally ill, basically untrained. So anyway, going forward, I hope that Pine County makes decisions about that, including, being a forerunner as to, how we're going to deal with that. I'm sure the Department of Corrections will come with requirements, but rather than wait for those, I hope we're progressive enough to address those issues before their rules and policies. So just something to consider for going forward. Again, I've really enjoyed my career. Again, thanks for all the opportunities. It was both interesting and at times entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brent, come here.
Working part time on the road.
Yeah.
Working with you.
Thank you.
We got presents for you too here, so hang on. It's a tradition here. We give a gold watch. In Pine County, of course, we don't have a gold watch. We've got a gold clock. I'm sure it's real gold. If you melt this
I'll
down,
tell people.
okay, you tell them. Steve said it's real gold. Yeah, okay. Maybe your grandkids will believe it. Your little grandkids. But anyway, Brent told me once years ago in reference to his programming that, all these people that we have in our jail get out. And And it's my job, it's our job as a county to see if we can't make them better people. And I think our whole county has really bought into that, Brent. And I thank you for leading the charge on that. It means a lot to me.
Running
And
a
I
jail
think-
is actually about managing the population. And so we take care of the reasonable needs, not everything they want, but reasonable needs. And our officers run the units. That takes us a long ways to running a successful jail. And I think over my term, we've had some issues, not much.
Yeah. And I think that's just about the first time I've seen you in that kind of a uniform, other than on a Sunday.
It's looking good on you.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Terry Fawcett, Probation Director. I just wanted to recognize Brent. He's been on the Probation Advisory Committee for 19 years. You worked 38 years. I don't know where you were for the other 19, but I think you were on from the beginning when the previous director started that committee. And as Reese could attest, nobody more invested on that committee than Brent. Every time we have a committee meeting, including this last time, very thoughtful conversation, always adds more to the committee than he takes from it. I've heard through my administrative assistant that he'd like to remain involved. You can be on it as long as you want. I read your article stating you still want to work in public service part-time. That I question. But you just one heck of a guy. And if you've seen him at our last committee meeting, doing that for 19 years, and still to get emotional the way he did, tells me everything I need to know about this man. So I appreciate everything that you've done for the committee.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
So Brent, if you still want to be in public service, we need some correctional officers and we part-time.
Arrowhead needs bus drivers.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I got to work with Brent, not in the jail, but in my office, where people who wanted to vote, he made sure that they were able to vote when they were incarcerated. So just the extra steps that you do to help people so that they can still live their lives while they're inside was really a joy. And it was just going outside of the limits that I think a lot of people would do. And I just really appreciated it.
Okay, I lied to these two ladies because Extension is up next. We're going to get an update here from.
Well, good morning. It's great for Extension, our educational services, to follow Brent's honor with his educational services. So great way to line that up. I'm Suzanne Henricks, and I'm a regional director for Extension. I serve an 8-county area, including Pine County. So it's great to be here with you. I don't think I've been here in person with you since you've taken out your dais and rearranged your room. So I've been on video, but not with you in the room. So it looks great. I have with me Jan Drodowski, who is a regional extension educator for Extension. She's going to talk a little bit about 4-H in a little bit, and we're going to just give you a general update for Extension and talk about a proposal we have for ARPA dollars for youth education. So I'll start with the general extension update. So we have in the Pine County Extension Office some new faces. We're going to have quite a few new faces, in fact. So that's really what I want to update you on. Roxanne Orvis, who is the Extension Office support, she's welcomed in quite a few new people and will be over the next few weeks, along with Terry Samala, the Master Gardener Coordinator. So as you know, Jimmy Johnson left Extension. He left Pine County Extension. He's a health and nutrition regional educator in the Northeast region. He has told us that his base of operation, and I've told you this before, is still Pine County where he lives, but he brings Extension health and nutrition resources to a region now. So he works with communities who are working on health and nutrition topics in a community effort. He also works on curriculum for the SNAP-Ed educators. So the next SNAP-Ed educator has been hired. Jimmy had left a few months ago. We have Kristen Riley coming into the SNAP-Ed role. She will, SNAP-Ed is the educational component to supplemental nutrition assistance program. And so she will be coming in to do individual and family education, along with bringing university resources to community efforts in Pine County and sometimes outside of Pine County. So she does go outside of the county lines. So I just want you to know that Kristen has been working in health and nutrition type topics in Detroit Lakes for the last few years, 7 years or 8. And she's in the process of moving here. So she'll start in a couple of weeks. She'll work with bringing educational services to schools, to individuals and families on budgeting grocery dollars, knife safety, how to follow a recipe, how to cook healthy meals. She partners a lot with Family Services, Health and Human Services. So they're all working together. They serve the same audience, low income population. So that's a requirement. That position is funded by the USDA. So there is no cost to the county for that. It's you house them. You house that person in the extension office. So then I'll move on to Katherine Hagan, who is the new ag educator. Katie Hagan, you probably know her. She grew up in Pine County, so that's an excellent thing. Katie was a high school teacher, ag educator. She worked with extension back when she was in college as a summer intern. So she knows how to do extension education. She has connected immediately with quite a few agencies and groups and farmers. So she's reached out to Pine Soil and Water. She's also worked with farmers. So she offered a coffee day. I was kind of nervous. She said, I'm just going to have a coffee day. Come have coffee with me at Toby's. She was overwhelmed with the response. And so that just speaks to what has been already going on with extension education and agriculture. And people have embraced that program and what she's doing. So thank you very much for your support on that. She also splits her time between Isanti. So she works here and in Isanti County. And then our third person, so we have a third staff member starting soon. That's our 4-H educator. So I'll let Jan talk a little bit about that, but Sarah Odendahl will start here pretty soon, I think next week, in fact. And I'll kind of turn it over to you, Jan, for the next part. Thank you.
Thanks. So as Suzanne mentioned, Sarah Odendahl has accepted the position here in Pine County, and she is excited. She is currently a educator in Stearns County, and she's been there for a couple of years. So she brings that experience with her, and as she would tell me, I'm coming home. And she is just so excited to start here. And I'm excited to have her. So I've had multiple conversations with her since her interview, and I'm thrilled for the county. And as you know, or some of you may know, we had an extended interim in that role. And we worked on a revitalization plan because we know there was significant turnover, and that was a concern for you, and it was a concern for us at the U as well. And so the revitalization plan was designed to gather some information from our local families, stakeholders, and to look at what we needed to address and what we need to do a little bit differently together. And so just some key points from that. We learned that we need to increase and strengthen our communication, both with our families and partners. We need to develop a broader and strong volunteer base, and also strengthen partnerships. And part of that is that connection to communication and being transparent and understanding what their expectations are and what ours are in 4-H as well. And then the last thing is to address issues in a timely manner. So as things bubble up, address them and deal with them so that we can move on and do what's right for our young people. So the other thing I want to share today is as Sarah joins Pine County and works here, she comes with a team of regional educators to support her. And so in my role as a supervisor, I'll have regular contact with Sarah. I also, one of my functions is quality learning environments. And so that's about the design and delivery of youth programs and making sure that we do a good job. Striving to look like that gentleman and what he did. Maybe he wants a job with the U somewhere down the road. He'd be a great hire. And so really thinking about how we put those pieces together. We also have a regional educator who works in animal science specifically. And I know that that's important for this county. Your fair is the highlight, I think, of the county and oftentimes what young people look forward to in 4-H as well. We have an operations educator who deals with all the things that happen behind the scenes, risk management, all that kind of stuff. And she'll be helping Sarah manage and navigate that work. Also a volunteer systems educator, and he is relatively new to our region. He worked in Isanti County and joined us a couple months ago. And so he's met family members. He's come to federation meetings. He's come to the board or the fair board meetings so that they could meet him. And lastly, we have an educator who works in STEM and civic engagement and leadership. And so I think she is well supported as she takes on this role. So with that, I want to transition. We were invited to come here today with a proposal, as Susan mentioned, for the ARPA funds. And so I think you've got that in your board packets. And so this proposal is based off of some work that we've been doing in other counties. And I think we're well positioned to support here in Pine County. If you look at the beginning, it talks about extension 4-H's two main goals that we strive for. And that is to make sure that young people develop a passion in areas that they're interested in, and also that they learn to lead and to be innovative and social change agents. And so we think about those communities in all of our counties, but here in Pine that maybe have really struggled through the pandemic. If you look at some of the data and the research, we know that young people, mental health is a huge concern. Suicide rates are up. And so how can we support those young people? And in 4-H, we don't do counseling, but we do skill development, specifically in the areas of social and emotional learning, as well as content areas. And so the proposal focuses on those elements and building off of programs that we have well established in Itasca County and South St. Louis County, where we work with marginalized audiences to build those social and emotional skills, increase vocabulary, increase understanding. Some examples would be communication skills, problem solving, emotional regulation, all things that young people need to learn to navigate successful in school, community, and at home. And so this proposal would specifically look at building those skills. I included a map that shows you the areas. We looked at the schools. That's probably the easiest place. There's some established programs already. We would look at partnering with those organizations. And if you look at the timeline, we would look at the spring and summer, really doing site visits and seeing what's happening in the summer programs at those sites, and looking for a fall launch where we would use the curriculum and the materials that we've developed in other sites, and be delivering after school programs, out of school time programs, depending upon what each of those communities has identified. I've worked closely with Brianna, help me with her last name. Thank you. Okay. And she's really been helpful in terms of identifying those community partners that she works with closely already, and is in the process of setting up a meeting so that we can talk about those 4-H opportunities, see what's a fit for them, what they like in terms of the menu that we offer, and what will work best in those communities. So I feel like we've got a strong foundation, both in terms of our background and our existing partnerships to move this forward. So questions, comments?
I have a question. So we met with Mille Lacs Band yesterday and they were talking about the desire to help their kids and to promote positive things. But one of the things that they talked about is they have after school programs. So they have one out at Lake Lena and they have one in Hinckley, and the kids go there, and actually the kids get paid to go there just to help initiate to get them to go get the positiveness. Is that something, I know you've got the schools listed, but is that something that would be considered is to go out?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it makes sense to go where the kids are already there, see what's happening, where there may be some gaps or where we can enhance what's already going on. Yeah.
I applaud you for putting that together because I've said this many, many times. We write out some pretty big checks for some kids that get in trouble and we have to write those checks out. And I don't think Reese sees very many of the people that have been in 4-H. And so if we can expand that population, if we can do something to get kids involved in neat stuff, we save it on the other end, if for no other reason than economics. But I think there's some long-term effects of what can happen when kids have a good experience being kids.
Yeah.
And 4-H is a good experience for kids.
Thank you. We think so. And I think it's exactly what you said, where if we can figure out what is it that those kids are invested in, right? What is that project area or that topic? And then we can identify caring adults in that community to partner with those young people to develop, we call it that spark. And then you add in that layer of building those basic SEL skills that sometimes when families are struggling, you know what, that's not where their priority is. And so that can be a miss. If we can fill that gap for families, we can help them think about career paths, right? And making a contribution in your community. And we've seen success. You know, our programs in Itasca, we work with a teen parenting program there. We work with alternative learning centers, and we've been in those schools and those places for three or 4 years now. And we're seeing, you know, parents will say, they're talking about this skill or this stuff, like, where is this coming from, right? So educators will see it and families recognize the difference that it makes.
Anybody got any more questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So you also have a mental health effort going on. Is there some overlap or cross-pollination, or where do these two programs touch?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think cross-pollination is just prime for that, right? Because oftentimes if we can get in to the schools and work with young people first, then we'll bring those families along. Prior to my work in Extension, I was a social worker in the schools, and I ran an after-school program, both with social skills and then some tutoring pieces. And, you know, those kids would come faithfully, right? We had a great time. Parents, it was more of a struggle, but if we fed them dinner and if I called them the day of to prompt them, they would show up. And so then we'd keep the kids busy, right? And then we could talk with parents about what's happening now and what are some things that we can maybe help them with. And I see this getting us in the door, and then that other proposal will be a wonderful overlap as well. And we've talked about that already.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Jen.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you wanted to take a formal action, I think we need to amend the agreement we have with Extension to provide for this program, so that would secure the funding. Is that?
I agree. We should go through an MOA, I would imagine. We'll figure that out, but I think it would be an addendum.
So if the board wanted to authorize the administrator to enter into that MOA addendum with Extension, we could expedite that and they could be on their way. And the funds, now up to $160,000 is identified in the ARPA plan. So those funds are available.
I'll make that motion. It's exciting.
And will that go through 2024? Those funds are
2026.
Oh, you can push it out as long as you say it's spent on that program, right? Okay.
Do I hear a second?
I can second.
Thanks, JJ. Got a motion by Lovegren, second by Waldham, to authorize the administrator to move forward with negotiating a contract not to exceed 160,000. Any more discussion? If not, and this will come out of ARPA funds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Yes.
Well, we have great expectations, So, Julie, we are lucky. We get the head of our whole operation here from AMC.
Thank you, Mr.
Julie,
Chair.
for coming.
I really appreciate the invitation. For the audience, my name is Julie Ring. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Minnesota Counties. And when you get the executive director, you get a person who knows a little bit about a lot of things. And so my goal today is to share a few updates with you and would love to have as much of a conversation as you're interested in, particularly about any legislative issues that are moving right now that you have questions about, or anything else we're doing at AMC. And so in your board packet, I did provide you with 3 handouts before the meeting. One was a little outline of what I thought I might talk about today after talking with your administrator a little bit about what you might be interested in. It's probably too long, which is typical, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each item. And then I also provided you with our legislative priorities for the association as we headed into this session. And I'm going to give you an update on some issues I think you're particularly interested in. And then I also shared with you something you might have seen before, which is what we call a county benefit sheet that we send to every county member at the beginning of the year, just reflecting on how AMC was of benefit to you in the previous year. So it includes things that AMC worked on for Pine County specifically during the last year. And then those of you in the room know when I walked in, I handed you 2 more things, and I know Dave added those to the board packet as well. One is a letter we wrote about our PILT initiative that I'm going to talk to you about. And the second is a handout that says draft on it that is a quick summary of the frontline worker and unemployment insurance law that was just passed and signed over the weekend. That's something that I put together with help from Matt Hilgart yesterday, and I put draft on it because you're the first people to see it. And they are still sort of making up the rules as they go. So that's what we knew as of yesterday. So with all that, let me just hit on a couple of things. And I have to say, when I first got up this morning, I turned on the coffee, I hadn't had any yet, and I pulled out this outline to just reacquaint myself with what I was going to talk about. And I saw May 3rd at the top, and I literally panicked because I thought, oh my gosh, it's not May, it's March, right? It's still March. Because unfortunately, the weather for the last couple of months has convinced me that we haven't hit anything remotely like spring, although just as I said that, the sun came out. So my first moment of panic passed because I thought if the first thing I gave you had a typo on it, that would be a tough way to start. But it is in fact May, and that means the legislature is almost done. Before I turn to the legislative summary, I just wanted to, in reference to that benefit sheet, say, the Association of Minnesota Counties, all 87 counties belong, and we sort of think of our work in 3 buckets. We do legislative services. I think that's what most county commissioners in particular know about what we do and are interested in, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But it really extends beyond the legislature, and seeing your county attorney here today reminded me that one of the things we spent a good chunk of time on last year was working with the Attorney General's office around the opioid settlement. So we work obviously across state agencies, the AG's office, and the legislature. Second bucket of work is helping to share best practices in county governance. So bringing you ideas that other counties are working on, bringing your good ideas to other counties, and then working with our team to come up with solutions to challenges that counties are facing. So a little later, I'll mention just a couple themes along that. And then we do training and development, and we create training. We work with partners to create training. I was struck by what Brent said, that he felt was a gift that this county supported his training throughout his career. We're really focused on that as a workforce strategy. And we know that it's something that workers value, finding meaning in their work and having the skills and capacity to do their work. And so we've done things like a supervisor academy. We've done mediation training, both for staff and elected officials. And we create our training based on what we hear from you that you need and your staff need. And that's an ongoing part of our work. And we also want to make sure it makes a difference, because we know when we ask you to leave the county and come to our events that you sort of have to justify that. And I was in a Zoom meeting with a commissioner yesterday who mentioned for her getting involved in the National Association of Counties was a little bit of a stretch with her county. And she said, the first meeting I went to, I came back home with an idea that would save the county $10 million. And that's not always going to happen, but what we strive to do by working in this best practice arena is make sure that when you take the time either to send your staff or participate yourself, that you come away with something that really matters. So that's all I'm going to say about sort of that part of AMC. And I want to talk a little bit about the legislative stuff, because that's obviously breaking news, right? But happy to answer your questions throughout or at the end about what we're doing, how we use your dues money, what we do that specifically benefits you, or any questions you have about that. So on the legislative update, I identified, I think, like 5 items on the outline I put together. And of course, like 6 more have come up. I'm not going to try to hit them all, but I'll touch on these and you can ask me about anything else. I know one item of real interest for all of you is the probation funding and what we call the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. And this, I think, may be one of the bright spots of the legislature, and it might not be quite as bright as we want it to be. But the way things are coming together at the Capitol, I do think there will be funding for probation. There's funding on both the House side and the Senate side. They approach it a little differently. And I know I have the specifics in front of me, but I'm also aware over my shoulder is an expert. So if he waves at you as I say anything, just let me know and I'll correct myself. But I did talk to Carly about this. And so you likely know the Senate in their final bill put $25 million in ongoing funding. And it gives CPO counties, which you are one, the 50%, with I think the appropriation for CPO is $5 million in the Senate bill. The House proposal is a little harder to understand on paper. It has $10.4 million, but that's just for the first year. You have to look out to what we call the tails, the future years, and the money goes up in the future years in the House bill. So the House has $10.4 million in the first year, $25.75 million in 2024, and then $38.3 million in 2025. That is our actual JRI proposal that AMC is supporting and has the full funding that we were looking for in those out years. But we are advocating strongly that they start higher than 10.4 and start higher, like closer to where the Senate is with 25 million. But even in the House number, CPO is still fully funded, even at that $10.4 million number, the CPO allocation is still fully funded.
Fully funded at 50%.
At 50, yes.
50% of eligible activities.
Which is considered fully funded, but that's a big, huge asterisk, isn't it? That's legally fully funded, 50% of eligible activities. Not fully funded from your budget's perspective, but from what the law says the state should be doing and isn't right now.
Right.
There is a wrinkle in the House bill in that the House bill eliminates supervision fees, which you do collect some supervision fees in Pine County. That is something that the House put in of their own volition. That was not part of the bill that we worked on or anything that had been discussed. I will just say it's not entirely shocking to me that they're looking at fee reduction. That's sort of a position of the House. And whether that stays in there, I think is yet to be seen. It's not on the Senate side. And we don't support taking tools away from counties. So, we'll be arguing sort of for this combination of Senate first year funding, House out years funding, Senate fees, not House fee position. So we don't know exactly what the bottom line will be. I do think the bottom line will be a reasonable amount of additional money. I don't know if it will have the new formula in law, and I don't know how the out years will look. But as I said, this is one area where we do think we will get additional funding for counties this session. And frankly, one of the few as I start to walk through the next couple of issues.
Well, thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Carly has worked really hard on it and has worked really hard to be a good advocate on behalf of all counties, regardless of their probation system. So another issue I know you guys have been interested in is the Health and Human Services modernization work. Bottom line, this is not going to go anywhere this session. And it is a real challenge because it's complicated and wonky and kind of only matters to us. And so that makes it a hard issue at the Capitol at large when we're talking about systems modernization and why we need to make these changes. Frankly, I'm surprised there was not more appetite for it because in general, the Senate has liked this kind of reform and they have money for a change because it usually takes an investment. But it's not moving in either body and I don't anticipate it suddenly will. One bright spot in HHS that I know Pine County cares about is work we've been doing on ICWA. We don't expect to see any changes this session, but we have laid some really solid groundwork in working with the tribes on ICWA reform and a potential joint legislative approach in a future year. Our staff has been invited to present to MIAC, the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, 3 times just in the last couple of months, which is pretty revolutionary for us in terms of opening up the communication on a statewide basis. I know you have really good communication here locally, but statewide, it's much more of a challenge. And I want to give a shout out to your human services staff and to Dave for being actively involved in that and advising our staff on how to continue to move forward. But I know Matt Hilgart, who you know his name if you don't know him personally, our government relations director, is feeling really positive about where we're headed with ICWA. So I'm considering it a bright spot, even though it's not a legislative success this year. We've never had as much progress as we did in the last few months. PILT, one of the handouts I wanted that Matt asked me to give you this morning was one of the letters we wrote in support of the PILT reform proposal. The PILT reform proposal is included in the House tax bill. It is not included in the Senate. However, we know the Senate likes it. And so we think there's a reasonable likelihood that the PILT proposal may move forward out of conference committee. Just big picture, the targets that the House had versus the Senate, the amount of money they had to spend were radically different. The Senate didn't have as much money to spend. Once they get into conference, they get to kind of meet in the middle somewhere. I don't think I believe on a policy level, this is something the Senate looks upon favorably, but they didn't have money to spend on it. So I think, again, Matt is very hopeful that this is something that will move forward. We've been very active. Obviously, the leadership has come out of this part of the state. We've had commissioners from your AMC District 1, Commissioner Annie Marcotte, and a couple of the commissioners from St. Louis County, Jukovich and McDonald, have all been testifying in support. And as I said, I'm putting this one in the hopeful category. So probation, I feel really good about this. About this one, I feel pretty good about. HHS, not so good about. The other 2 things I want to mention are the opioid bill. I alluded to all our work on that last year. We do have to pass legislation essentially to change state law to conform to the MOU that we created. And that's moving along pretty well without any hiccups. And we do expect a standalone bill to pass that will enact that opioid agreement we have with the state, which would bring 75% of the opioid funds out to counties and some eligible cities. It's not a ton of money. If you've done the analysis, it's really not a ton of money. But from a principal perspective, to have that money come directly from the settlement to local government without making a stop at the state first is a really important concept for us in terms of control, and also having a ton of flexibility in how you can use the money. The way the proposal is shaping up, we do think it will maintain some of the fees on opioid manufacturers for a number of years. So what we're hoping is we'll get sort of our our opioid deal that we struck, and we still will get some funding that will come in for child protection for a few more years. So we are hoping there's still 2 pots of money. And right now that's how it looks to be happening. And so together that might, at least for the first several years, be a good amount of money to make a difference. Finally, the last thing I had on your list, I'll mention broadband, just because I know that is an issue you all love to talk about. And it's also another potential win, because we do expect there to be money. Again, never as much as we would hope. The House bill currently only has $25 million of additional broadband border-to-border grant funds. Representative Rob Eklund, our former Coochin County Commissioner friend, his bill was for $100 million. When the deal was put together by leadership, it went down to 25 million. And I know that Rob has been quoted as being not very happy about that.
It's okay, we're not either.
Yeah, nobody is. It would, the House language, so has the additional 25 million. It also increases the cap. A grant program can receive from 5 million up to 10 million. And it also increases the state match, can be up to 75%. So it does have some components in it that we like, just not enough money. If you're going to increase the cap and increase the state match, that means fewer projects without a lot of money.
Julie, that one just really baffles me. They got $9 billion. There has not been one person in the state of Minnesota that says broadband is a bunch of hooey.
Yeah.
They all say we need to fund it. We need to figure this out. And they have an opportunity, 100 million would barely build out Pine County.
Yeah.
So I just don't know where they're coming from. And so do you have any backstory on that?
So I think at a very high level, the way I would describe it is the House had a lot of things they wanted to spend money on this session. And and you've seen that. If you see what across all of state government, the House is spending a lot of money in a lot of ways. The Senate isn't spending very much money on anything, but I should say the Senate bill actually has more money in it. It has 110 million, but it's all from ARPA funds. It's no state funds. So again, there's not a lot of use of this big state reserve, none on the Senate side and 25 million on the House side. The only thing I can say about it is heading into negotiations in conference committee, I think you just have these 2 really different perspectives and they're trying to position themselves. It's almost, you know, I'd be so bold as to say, it's almost like I said with HHS, where it's like too wonky and nobody understands it but us. Broadband, everybody loves, and it's almost not a political win necessarily for any one group as they're looking ahead to elections, because it's a win for everybody. And that might be a little cynical, but we're at that point in session. So I hope we'll come out with more. And plus, with the federal money we see coming down, we're looking to engage with the state on their plan for spending, not just ARPA money, but the IIJA, I think I got that right, acronym, money, so that we can get more of that money out into the field faster. I mean, now is the time. There is not only this large state surplus, but there is a lot of federal money. And I think you've all heard me talk about, if we can do this well, we ought to be able to maximize our power by working together to get good prices on, you know, as we're negotiating with contractors, and to bring the public and private sectors together to get it done. I'm still hopeful, especially because of the amount of federal money. And I'm actually still hopeful that at the end of the day, this is enough of a win at the end of session that there will be something of substance there. So again, in this case, maybe we hope for the Senate amount and some of the additional shares and things in the House side. I think it's reasonable to hope for that, but we'll see. The last thing I want to mention on legislative is the other handout I just gave you today on the frontline worker pay and unemployment insurance, only because this is late breaking news. The bill passed over the weekend. The governor signed it into law. And I won't read this handout to you. It's pretty easily digestible bullet points, but for the sake of the folks who are here listening that don't have it in front of them, I'll just remind folks that This was a compromise that included both $2.7 billion for unemployment insurance. That's going to benefit, they're estimating about 100,000 businesses who saw a real impact on unemployment during the pandemic. It includes $500 million for qualified frontline workers, which the state is estimating will result in average payments of about $750 per person for 650,000 workers. That part feels very much like quick napkin math to me, because if you look at who the qualified workers are, it's a big list, and I included that here for you. So it's all long-term care, home care, health care, emergency responders, public health, social services and regulatory services, courts and corrections, childcare, schools, food service, retail, and temporary shelters and hotels. It's a big list of potential frontline workers, including some of yours. And so nothing in here prohibits frontline workers who work for counties from applying for this. And this is something that we want to get more detail on from the state for you, because employers are required to give notice to their employees if they're eligible. And we are assuming that some county employees will be eligible. The good news, I think, for counties is this is all going to be managed by the state. What they're saying right now is it will be a self-attestation. So an employee has to fill out a form to the state attesting that they meet the criteria. And I've included what the criteria are here. They have to say, I meet these criteria, and then the state processes the form. And the employer does not have a role in certifying anything, at least as of today, which is good because it means that you don't have to try to sort through which of your employees this might apply toward and which it might not. That's going to be the state's job, which is something that we're really grateful for. And at least as of today, it doesn't say much about what the state's going to do other than accept someone saying, I deserve this. So it's a personal attestation. A few other details. Once it's open, it will be open for 45 days. So it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround. My understanding as of right now is all these dollar amounts are estimates because they have to know how many people apply, and then they divvy up the pot between them. And so if it's a lot more people than the 650,000 that they've estimated, the amount per person is going to go down. And I think that's feasible, actually. I'm not sure that 650 is a big enough number. And then I put at the bottom of this handout for you, and would just encourage folks to keep an eye on the website that DEED has set up. We'll be keeping an eye on it for you as well, because some of these things that I've mentioned that aren't entirely clear around self-attestation and the employer role, they say they're going to have more clarity posted on this website soon. So this is a big compromise. It does show that the legislature and the governor can get something done, which gives me great hope as we head into the last couple of weeks. There's huge differences right now between all the parties at the negotiating table, but this is a sign that they have the ability to get things done. And so I'm hoping on some of our key priorities that will also be true. I'll pause there and ask if you have any other questions about any legislative topics before I just wrap up with a couple other themes. The ones I mentioned, or anything else?
Chair.
Yeah.
Maybe just a comment. You summarized it well.
Do you want to come to the mic for the audience? I feel like whatever you're going to say, I don't want to try to repeat.
I was going to start. Thank you, Terry Fawcett, Probation Director. I was going to just thank you, first of all, for the summary.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to say is the collaboration between Carly, the AMC MACAC lobbyist, and the MACPO lobbyist has been terrific.
Right.
It's just been fantastic to watch those two work. The one thing relative to the proposed new formula, which I know Carly's got on her radar, but is the impact of misdemeanors potentially getting funded at half the rate of felons.
Mm-hmm.
That makes zero sense for a lot of reasons. The main one to me is two of our most violent crimes are DWIs and domestics.
Mm-hmm.
And most domestics are charged out in the misdemeanor category versus the felony category. So I just hate when we put money on levels of crime. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I don't know, like I said, that formula issue is going to get addressed here, but I thank AMC for their work and, specifically Carly for the great effort. So thank you.
I will bring that message back, Terry. Thank you.
I gotta add one thing to that because it's been my favorite thing to whine about for 15 years, I think. So I'll have to find a new whining point to.
I'm confident we can find one for you.
You'll find one, I'm sure.
I will also mention, was there another question, Dave? Anyone?
I've got a question whenever it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to start, Julie, and say thank you for coming. I wanted to highlight the work that Angie has done. Is it Angie?
Peace, rhymes with peace.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I remember it.
I met her recently and we immediately went to a first name basis. But we have, through the I want to focus on health and human services.
Yep.
Through the pandemic, we got some waivers, we changed how we did business. We had really watershed events with how can we do better. We in Pine County have been working with our AMC partners, with our regional partners, with our legislative delegations, really trying to get the paperwork reduction for SSIS to get some traction. Was very excited to see the general modernization piece, at least get out of the gate, have broad support. And I think my downfall was I actually had some hope, right? That we have some really good legislation that is needed. And the work that our human services workers do is important, it's complicated, it's hard, and it requires modern technology. And the one thing that we cannot do is get more workers, right? We hear of counties that hire people just to do the computer paperwork piece of these systems. We don't have that luxury. So I don't know who to complain to, or Steve, you can maybe, this will be your next issue.
My new wine.
But I think speaking for everybody at the county level, it is so disappointing to think and almost embarrassing that the state of Minnesota can't do better to help our social services workers do their job, which is protecting our children, our elderly, our mental illness folks. Where's the partnership?
Yep.
So
Every time I order something from Amazon, Cabela's, I think if our HHS people could use this system, instead of me having to type, who types very poorly, type my whole name out, my whole address out every time I do something, it's ridiculous that in this day and age, when I'm working with you, and now we have another service that I have to go back and start all over, type in your name, your address, your social security, it's just like, come on.
And if you, because you worked for LPHA, you have insight into the field, but we have had Beth Jarvis, our child support supervisor, down to the Capitol twice to testify. I'm not an emotional guy. I get emotional listening to her, right? Because she has real life stories. And so anything you can do to help us get that message that these aren't numbers, these aren't funny, it's not new buildings, it's not just buying stuff to spend public money. It's really impacting the lives of people who are residents in the state of Minnesota.
And for no other reason, David, we think the economic reason for spending some money up front to save money in the end is what we do in business is we invest so we can have our people spend less time doing this.
I'll share a couple of comments. One is, Angie might have told you, we have a little hope around the SSIS paperwork project that you all have been working on, at least to get the funds to do a study to uncover the cost, which is something. The other thing I'll say, as Dave mentioned, this was the area I worked in for AMC before I was promoted to this job. And I sat through many hearings over many years at the Capitol talking about systems modernization, starting in the 90s up through, we're still talking about it. And I remember this would have been in the early 2000s when they had a consultant that was working on this huge modernization project at DHS, and they eventually just like ended it because it was not working. And the consultant said, maybe you all have heard this, I don't remember the exact number now, but it was something like a social worker working in, and I'm going to get the programs mixed, but one of the eligibility programs has to make 125, there's 125 decision points in determining eligibility. And we cannot program a computer to do it. Now, technology has come a long way since the early 2000s, but the point that they were making was the amount of nuanced decision-making that your eligibility workers have to go through is really complex. And it's a lot of if then you do this, you keep going, you go down this list, and as you answer, you go down different lists, and it's complicated. And it's also a reason why there's so many potential errors when you have things that are that complex and nuanced and not automated. But the level of complexity is such that when we worked to redo some of the assessment work for our programs for our seniors, I'm sure you all have heard that we created a new kind of monster because of the amount of questions we want to ask if we want to determine anything one of our senior citizens might be eligible for, results in an hour-and-a-half long assessment. So there's both pieces, I think, and that's your point. This modernization piece is about simplifying and streamlining these requirements in a way that they are manageable, and then automating them. And both things kind of need to happen at once. And people just seem really stuck about it. But it is something that you're right. We need to keep showing the human side of. This is not about computer programs at the end of the day. It's about people and the services that they need, and getting that done in a way that is efficient for the people we serve, and is manageable for the amount of workforce we have. So I hear you, and know that it is incredibly complex to explain to people. So maybe we will get you on that one next. The last thing I'll mention on the legislative side is just there was a little blip about levy limits about a week or so ago, which has, I'm glad to say, has sort of blipped away. But this is a complicated issue for us to talk to our legislators about. I know every county in the state is facing challenges with valuations, and lots of surprises as people are opening their statements and seeing that their property valuation has increased. And a typical reaction at the Capitol is, well, we should enact levy limits so that we manage this. Well, I don't have to tell you that valuation changes don't directly translate to property tax changes. That's not a direct line. They're different things. And that levy limits have the effect of essentially shifting around who's paying, as opposed to keeping and lowering how much everybody's paying. And it's a complex discussion, but I will tell you, Matt Hilgart is an absolute expert at it. And he has been talking to legislators about unintended consequences of different ideas that have emerged about how to handle this valuation challenge that we're all facing. And as always, our message has been that you're in the best position to handle that for your constituents. And that a statewide law doesn't have enough nuance, and also has unintended consequences when we have different kinds of property across our state. So that does not appear to be an issue. I had that high on my list when I wrote my notes last week, and it appears that Matt has dealt with it. So we're on to new things. The last thing on legislation is I'll mention, we've tried out this year doing some webinars on Monday mornings. So we do a written email to all of you every Monday. Our team has worked really hard to make that more concise, easier to digest. But we are trying out a few webinars, and we have one next Monday morning that you can participate in. And the nice thing about that is there's Q&A possibility with our staff who, as I said when I started, they're the experts. And so when I don't have Terry, I have a team of, a whole bunch of other people who can answer the detailed questions that you might have. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. I suspect I'm at time, but I do want to just mention the 3 big themes we're working on with counties, because I know they matter here too. One is the challenges with workforce. We've mentioned it throughout everything we've talked about today. And it's a real challenge everywhere in the state. If you were at our annual conference last December, you heard our state demographer say, we are only in the middle. We are only halfway through the challenge of fewer workers. And I mean, I saw the audience sort of gasp because it feels like we're in a really tough place. And what she said is we have 15 years ahead of us that are going to be as bad or worse. 15 years, another generation of trying to figure out how to do these important programs with fewer people, and certainly no more people. So what does that mean? You have to get creative about where we're finding employees, and you've got to hang on to the employees that we have. And we are working to try to help counties share best practices. I know you all have recently enacted a $1,000 recruitment bonus for staff. I know that those kind of things feel like we're edging out into like new territory for counties, but that is what the private sector is doing, and that is who we're competing with. And so it is, I think, good for us to try to think creatively about the tools other sectors use and which of those work for us. The best people to find our employees are the people who currently work for us and know what the work is. So I think that's a really interesting idea. We'll see how it works for you. Another one, I wrote an article that'll be in our newspaper that comes out in about a week or two. I don't know how familiar your county is with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, if that's something your human resources staff are familiar with, but it's something we've been looking at AMC. So there's a federal program that will essentially forgive student loans of employees of government and nonprofits. Now, there's a lot of pieces to this. So if someone works in a qualifying workplace, which your county is for 10 years and makes payments on their student loans for 10 years, at the end of that period, if their loans are not paid off, they're forgiven. And this is a benefit that is only available to government and certain nonprofits. That is something that we could potentially be using as a tool in our recruitment that the private sector doesn't have. This is one thing, they often pay better. We have a few tools in our toolbox. And so this is something that if you're not familiar with it, there's going to be a long article in the AMC newspaper. I started writing an article and then I read an article out of the Kentucky Association's newspaper and I called them and said, can I just reprint your article? Because otherwise I'm going to plagiarize it, which we know isn't good. So we reprinted their article and then added some updated info. But the idea here is recruitment is challenging for us, particularly for new grads. And this is something that you can offer, and I would suggest you might actually want to advertise as part of your recruitment package. And we're going to be talking more to the HR directors about that. We are continuing to work on the bridging divides and good community engagement. I won't get into that in depth. And then Dave alluded to our other work that we do on partnerships with state agencies and places where it is good and maybe not as good, and what we think of as partnership versus what the state thinks of as partnership. And that could be a long conversation that I won't spend a lot of time on right now, just to tell you it's one of the areas of our focus on how we really talk to state government about the role of local government as an independent authority, and sometimes their deliverer of service, and what that relationship needs to look like to be high functioning. So I think I've gone on too long, so I'm going to stop there, and happy to answer any questions now or individually in the future. Appreciate the time.
We appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Very, very nice of you. We'll move on to voting equipment grant account.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer. One of these days, you're going to have me stop talking about voting equipment, and we're getting there. This is one of the final pieces of the puzzle. We've been awarded $128,680.13 of a voting equipment grant from the state of Minnesota. And that will supplement the purchase of the equipment that you purchased that you authorized purchasing way back on March 1st, that I keep looking down to see if the semi's here yet, because it's coming today.
All right.
And so before you today, though, you do have just the grant agreement to approve and authorize the county board chair and county administrator to sign.
So this would be paid in full with grants?
It is not paid in full with grants. So at that March 1st meeting, you authorized $150,000 of ARPA funds as well. And then there ended up to be about $14,000 of election fund balance that we ended up using. But with all the grants received, that is way less of county funds than I ever imagined we were going to use.
Wonderful.
So we need a motion.
I will make that motion. I'm so
All right.
excited.
Who was that? Matt?
Yes.
Matt. Motion by Ludwig, or motion by Lovegren, seconded by Ludwig, to go ahead with the voting equipment for 128,680.13. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aerial photography purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Many of you probably have used our county beacon site for obviously your work purposes. We have a lot of people that use it for personal purposes. We've got realtors, title companies, all sorts of people that use it. In my board request, you might have noticed a crazy big number, but in 2021, there were over 5.4 million property searches on our Pine County beacon site.
How many?
5.4 million.
That's more than the jail.
Right. And when you go to that beacon site, you can just do property searches or you can go to the map. So of that 5.4 million, 4.7 million people actually went to that map and looked at the map for the property that they were searching.
There's got to be somebody, several people.
It's interesting
every
because
minute of the day.
right. Yeah, and I actually can dig those stats down further and see like the parcel numbers that were searched. And it's like the top parcel number, I put it in because I'm like, well, why was that searched like 6,000 times? But then you go look and it was listed for sale for pretty cheap this year. So it's like, oh, I'm sure everybody was trying to figure out what was happening or something. But anyways, the background to that map is obviously the aerial photo. You can't really use that. I mean, you can use the map feature and I use the map feature without that aerial, but that aerial really takes it to the next level. We flew aerials in 2011 when we first got the beacon site. And then we flew them again in 2018 to update those maps. There was a lot of changes between 2011 and 2018. Crop prices were really high. We saw entire areas of trees cut down and made into fields. Building wasn't as much during that time period, but there was a lot of just land changes. And now since 2018 aerials, obviously there's been an insane amount of building that's happened. So our aerials that we currently are using from 2018 are really getting outdated at this point. So I have before you a request to fly new aerials next spring, in the spring of 2023. The total cost is just over $193,000. That is completely paid out of the recorder compliance fund. So that's not tax levy dollars. That's out of the $10 from every single document that's recorded. And that's not a fee that we choose to charge. That's a statutory fee that's charged. And we have to set it aside for purchases like this. And so you can see the fee schedule. It's something that I've budgeted in that compliance fund for, well, since 2018 with planning to spend it. And so I'm just requesting the go ahead to sign the order form to move forward with that purchase. Questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so 193,000 for aerial photos. What again did we just spend on voting equipment? Was it that
Like 300,
300?
337, but the voting, this is out of the recorder compliance fund. And so it can only be spent on property records items.
Sure. I was just trying to figure out on such a large ticket item, we looked at competitors and everything for the voting equipment. like competing bids and stuff. And then, and I'm just curious, with Google Photos and everything out there, and I mean, isn't there a lot that's already out there for free? And I did look at this, it's called Eagle Eye now?
Eagle View, yes.
Eagle View.
Yes,
Um,
so the quality is very, very different from the Google aerials to the aerials that we have specifically flown. In our cities, for example, in this contract, the resolution is, it's called 3-inch resolution. So each pixel only covers 3 inches, which Steve probably understands what that means. It's a little bit over my head, where Google, I've heard that's more like 24-inch resolution. So Google, every pixel covers a 24-inch by 24-inch area. So it makes it very difficult to use Google for like the assessor's office staff, for example. If there's a gated property that they can't get back to, they need to use that aerial photo to measure a building. And you can't do that using a Google aerial because you've got shadows and you've got just kind of distorted and.
Yeah, and then I seen that, like, from what I've seen, they offer an app for free, Eagle View, and it's used a lot by roofing contractors and everything because the pixels, and it's so clear they can actually measure and scale roofs and do the like rain gutters and everything. So I guess I was just trying to figure out if it's a free app for them. It looks like we get, or the county pays for.
The aerial portion.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then anyone can use it
And I
for
didn't
free.
answer your other question about the contractors.
Yeah.
So Eagle View is a contractor with the NCCC, which is our computer consortium. And so we don't have to go out to bids or anything because it's a group purchase already. There's one other company that works in Minnesota that flies aerials. However, they do probably like 1 or 2 counties. Otherwise, every single other county uses Eagle View. And so it ends up to be cheaper because they're flying neighboring areas at the same time. And like our beacon site, the aerial's out there for people to use for free as well.
I remember when I started and we'd have to go get out the old aerial photos and we'd have to get out our little scales and do all of our measuring. And this system is so easy to work with.
I think
And
it's one of those things, if you took that away from people right now, you think people screamed when their valuations went up? I mean, it's just a common thing now that people use to look at, I don't know, just for fun, if nothing else. But they use it for crop management and possible, you know, we could move this fence or whatever.
The list of uses is endless.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that, JJ, you're right. There are a lot of different places out there that you can go to get it. But I look at the employees here that use it. Plus you've got all of your appraisers, you've got all of these
Our
people from
sheriff's
outside.
office uses it, our dispatch uses it, highway, I mean,
Used by
HHS
everybody.
uses it.
Yeah, it's very, very well used. And having it outdated is not a good idea. So, are you ready for a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to purchase the aerial photo.
Did you move it? I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Ludwig. Any more discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Chair. So, just because I don't know, what can you spend those dollars on in your compliance fund?
So the statutory definition is a little bit broad. You know, it says property record systems. And so the compliance fund, really, I've had a budget built on that for aerials and for our new tax and CAMA system. Once those things are out of the way, then we can start to think a little bit more broadly about what we'd want to spend that money on. Another portion of besides the recorder compliance fund, there's the recorder technology fund. And so that's $11 from every recorded document. And so that's supposed to be used on technology for the recorder's office. And so that Ryan, I think very broadly on, because the recorder's office uses a lot of technology that, yes, maybe some other departments use as well. So Ryan and I work together pretty close on
coming up with ways to spend that money to offset tax levy so that it doesn't have to be tax levy dollars that are spent.
Yeah, I was thinking of how far are we in like scanning and storing?
Right. So like for just in general,
Yeah, because we had a room we emptied.
right.
I don't know, but and we, I just, so are we ever gonna get to the point where we're kind of caught up and then it just can happen as you go then?
I mean, from like my office's standpoint, to me, we're as caught up as we need to be, and we're just moving forward. Like, for example, the recorder's office. Everything is scanned. It's just a matter of things are only indexed back to 1995. And so if you want to go prior to 1995, then you have to do some reference.
Fine, I don't need all your, I just want to know where we're at
Yeah.
with that, and is that something if we get up to speed? Okay, I get that. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? American Rescue Plan Broadband Grant Program.
I can still say good morning. I'm Leslie Sauter, your Economic Development Coordinator. In front of you and in your packet was a lengthy grant application, but this is in response to you guys allocating about $750,000 of the ARPA funds to broadband. When we hired Hometown Fiber, we not only had them do an assessment of the entire county, but we wanted to use their expertise to help develop a grant program. So we weren't just giving away ARPA funding to broadband projects without having some sort of thought process, listening to our community as we work through the Blandon CBR program and Blandon broadband community programs that we need not only reliable, affordable, but an efficient use of public dollars as we invest in broadband. So it's about a 17 or 18 page grant application. But on page 16 is where the point values start getting assigned so that we can really evaluate each proposal independently and make sure that it meets the criteria of our community. We want to have at least two rounds of grant funding, and the first round would run May 3rd to June 17th, allowing them to turn in their applications mid-June. We could evaluate them. We're proposing to have myself, County Administrator David Minke, as well as Commissioner Lovegren and Holland evaluate these and then bring it back to the board for final approval. Kind of a standard grant program operation, keeping it very upfront, open and honest and transparent. We do request right now only $250,000 to be allotted to this first round, because we do anticipate that with the Reconnect Award announcement for the East of Hinckley project, that we might need some of these ARPA dollars to use that, or we might need to hire a consultant to help us with some of that work. So we're just trying to be cautious as we move forward so that we're not spending all of it in one big round and then don't have anything in 2 years when we need it to move forward. So that is our request today for $250,000, and open up the round this afternoon, close mid-June, come back to the board probably late June or early July.
I think one of our thoughts is, we've got vendor or vendors that probably could do a little project. It might be 20 homes, something like that, that if they had a little seed money and tried to keep this simple enough so it wasn't daunting to them. But if they needed $50,000 was the thing that would put them over the edge to serve that little development that's just outside of their service area, that this might put them over the edge. And then they could use whatever other funds they could leverage using this to help them do that. And, it's not the entire county. Somebody isn't going to take this money and probably do the entire county. Although if they wanted to, we'd sure look at it. But I see us doing this maybe several times till we use up the 750,000. So we do need a motion to move forward with this.
I'll make that motion.
We've got a motion. And I will second it. Anybody have discussion or questions?
I guess I have a question.
Yep.
Like when you're saying like just a small pilot area, or then what do we do with that? Or how do you, I mean, how do you decide who gets it, who doesn't get it? I mean, just where the, I suppose where the wires lay, I suppose, right, Steve, where the fiber
Well,
is, or
if a company comes to us and says, you know, through their application process, we could serve 1,000 homes, and if we could get 200 of that, 250,000, and we've got 3 other vendors that say, if you give us 50,000, we can serve 6 homes apiece. We're probably going to give it to the one that can serve that 1,000 homes.
or that whole questionnaire and that they have to, and you score them and that
Yeah.
whole process. Okay.
Yeah, there's a process they go through, and we're trying to get some money out there to help them be able to leverage some of that money against some other funds that they may be able to, maybe they don't have any other funds. Maybe $50,000 is half of the project for them. And you know, we'll find out through this process.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we have like 3 projects that we're working with 2 other providers on where they got a 50% match from Blandon. And in each of those projects, they're going to be able to help 50 to 100 households have these types of speeds that we're aiming for. Those types of proposals, even small, would be entertained through this, and they would be evaluated using the point system. And then let's say a larger provider came to us and they're like, you know, we're going to apply for $10 million from the state. We would love to have, you know, $2,000 for each jurisdiction we're serving from the county. They would be able to apply for this as well, and we would evaluate it based on what service they're providing. There would be no demerit for the number of households you're serving, recognizing that it's a rural community. And if you're only serving 10 households, but it's still $1 million project and you want a little bit of seed money from the county, that it still has merit because you're bringing high speed, efficient, and reliable internet to these folks.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of leaning. So density, are they gonna do it close to where they exist, or are we gonna try to, I'm just thinking from future. So if we could get to a gap where all the other property in between become more valuable because there's service there.
I think Leslie hit on it. You know, we've got a project from the Blandon one. SCI is getting 25,000 all, and they're gonna plow a fiber up to Carrick. And so anybody they pass from wherever they're taken off from north of Sandstone to Carrick is going to have an opportunity to hook up. And anybody in Carrick, the Carrick Town Hall will get hooked up. So that's a pretty small investment on our part through the Blandon Foundation. And that's what we're to potentially give them an opportunity to serve a lot of customers. Because they're going by, if they're going by your mailbox, they're gonna make the equipment available so they could put a drop to your house.
That's what I'm thinking of future with economic, you know, growth. If anything, you're gonna need stuff out there. So
Right.
that if we can get some of them longer reaches done, it's gonna, all the land is gonna be better served, or whoever may live on that.
Right. Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
If I could just maybe address the more general question of how did we get to here, right? So we took a lot of information from the CBR Accelerate program. Hometown Fiber did some work to determine technically where the issues were. And if you look at the text of the application, where you get the points is responding to those needs that were identified through these processes. And so resolving bottlenecks, doing last mile fiber, being affordable, right? You get points for doing all of those things, which were identified through our process over the last year and a half of all of the work that we did in the community, or the work that Leslie did in the community.
No, I get it. I just trying,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
figuring, how can we get the most bang for the buck?
Well, that's why we're gonna put a grant application out there. And so we hope that providers will look at this as we could make this work if we had the seed money.
The thing I really like about this is the application is for everybody. And so there's no favorites, it's, everybody fills out the application and then they have the point system that goes with that. So it's very fair. I appreciate that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just add to that, part of the input we received from Hometown Fiber was to incorporate the efficient spending piece. 15 points to tell us how you're going to efficiently spend funding on your project. And does that mean you're partnering with a fiber provider already to extend your service? There are providers who lease those strands to do their work. They don't actually plow it in themselves. Those types of proposals then are more efficient at using public dollars because we're not putting fiber in the ground where there already is fiber in the ground. We're using what already exists. So we will give proposals that are doing that additional points.
Are you seeing any contact from the satellite providers or anything that's, what is it, microwave, or are they even?
Yeah, the low level ones. I know some
Yeah,
people
are
are
they-
signing up, using them already.
Because there was that one
Right
county.
there.
I have Starlink. No, they don't reach out to me, but they take my money every month. We are working with, the hardline fiber to the home types of providers, the fixed wireless, and even cable, all three, which, we heard from Hometown Fiber that, cable will be good for the next 10 years, but we really need to, and we do give more points to projects that will bring that hardwire to the home or to the premise. But we are recognizing that that's not possible in every location. So we're not going to demerit a project that isn't.
And we are working with a company that actually does fixed wireless. So they get fiber to a tower. They put an antenna on that tower and they beam it out to a roughly 6 mile radius. And then you can have a receiver at your house and they're getting 100 down, 20 up speeds. So it's pretty good service.
And part of their business model too is as they grab more wireless customers, then it gives them the ability to start expanding their fiber network too. So it's kind of a process. But
Because we were down in St. Paul at there was that county I said that had, it was just a great success story. They just didn't get their mind set on just one way of doing it. They had to use, multiple things. And one of them was the fixed wireless, and I believe they even worked with the Starlink, and then of course
And
actual
I
wires.
would say we're in that boat.
Same boat. Okay.
Yep. We would love it if somebody would come and say, we'll put fiber to everybody's home in Pine County. And nobody's come to tell us they're gonna do that yet. So we're taking what we can get. We've been pretty excited about the work that Star Wire has been doing. They stepped up to the plate and they're putting in a project to the Shangwatana Town Hall. And then they're putting equipment on a tower out by the radio station that'll hit the Royalton Town Hall and the Pine Town Hall. So, little bits and pieces. We're moving ahead, JJ. At least we've moved the needle. We're off a dead to the left. So we got a long ways to go.
I met with the Wanders last week and they were talking, one of the representatives from East Central Energy came there. And one of the things that they brought up is we've got houses, and I didn't realize this is my ignorance, that we have people who are like 2 miles from an electrical service. So they live off grid. I always thought people that lived off grid did it by choice, but we have people in our county that don't do it by choice. They just don't have electricity. So with that, we're gonna have to have the other options. You know, if EC comes in and says, okay, we're gonna give it to all of our membership, we've got people that don't have power. So it's gonna be, we know that we have to open up a lot of different avenues to be able to get it to where it needs to go.
So, any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Commissioner update. Broadband meeting, you gonna talk about that, Terry?
It was a
We
sad,
kind of did.
it was a sad day for me. One of the things that we found out at that meeting was that we have that grant that Pete Stauber did for us. And then it was signed by the president, and, you know, in my simple mind, it's okay, where's the money? There's another application process that has to be done for that. And Leslie mentioned that it's going to be an application that we will probably have to hire somebody to fill out for us because it's so complicated. And they do it all the time and know what they're doing, where it would take us a lot of time and we might not pass it because it's that intense. So we have to get those applications, and that has not come forward yet, has it, Leslie? That we're still waiting for that application process to happen.
And
so,
Mr. Chair, and
Yes.
I can hot off the press. So yesterday I made my every 3 or 4 week call to our contact at USDA. His voicemail said he has retired as of the end of April. And here's a new name if you have any questions. So I contacted that new name. I got a voicemail back today who said he had forwarded my questions on to the appropriate contact, and I should expect a call within 24 to 48 hours. So I am holding my breath.
wow, so you actually got answered this time.
So that was more progress than we made in the last 2 months. So
Wow.
hopefully I'll know more by the end of the week as to what that process to claim the appropriation is. And that may entail an additional application to the Reconnect project through USDA.
So if you have people, because it's going to affect your areas too, that say, when is this going to happen? Right now, we don't know because we have that other process that needs to go through. We've got the project that we just did was a big one. So we've got the $250,000 for the first round. I guess that's, what else would you like to
That
add?
was, we spent a lot of time talking about our grant that we just passed. So
Mhm.
that was probably the highlight.
Wasn't the highlight, it was pretty sad.
Yeah, the highlight and the low light.
Yeah.
Arrowhead counties, anybody get there?
No, I didn't.
Extension committee.
Extension was really, it was up at the Osprey Wilds, which used to be the Audubon. And so it was really interesting. They came and they talked to us. They told us things that they have going on. One of the things that was, I thought, very interesting is if you have any kids or grandkids that want to go to camp at Osprey Wilds, they're doing it as a pay as you can. Make sure I get the right words here, but child camps week long, it's with that, it's, if they're saying it's $350 to go to camp for a week, and it's not the overnight camps, it's the day camps, and you only have $35 to pay, they'll take your child for $35. And so looking at our kids in our community and how we're promoting them to do healthier things and do things that will create more outreach for them and more positive environments, that's a really key thing that we could start promoting for our youth to do. So that was a big part of it. And then we talked about the Farm Family of the Year, and I didn't get the go ahead if they approved it or not. So I can't tell you who it was at this point, but then, and then they talked about it a lot with the Extension Office updates today on the other issues.
Rush Line Corridor canceled. Snake River Watershed. Did you go to that, Terry?
I did. So one thing, I know Caleb sent it out, but here it is again. There's going to be tomorrow here from 4:30 to 7, an open house where people can come and they can ask questions and get their questions answered. There'll be snacks provided. So if anybody wants to attend this, I've got the poster for it here. And we did talk a lot about They want to have, their new board is going to have 3 members. And then the way it was set up was the 3 members would be chosen by Soil and Water and by the county. And then it would be voted on by the Snake River subcommittees. And so, you know, the question was, who's paying for these people that are going to be going to the meetings? And they said the counties. And I said, then the county should decide who's going to be on their committees. So that was, that was one of the comments. So that it got tabled. And we did talk about having Dave come and talk, being on the agenda at our next meeting to discuss how they were going to put the chairperson, or not the chair, but the, I can't think of what the position's name is right now. I'm sorry. Director, thank you. How they're going to put the director on and who's going to actually be responsible for them. And so.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask a question, Terry, so you're working on, the Snake River Management Board is working on the JPA and updating that and looking at going to 3 members versus 4?
Right now, we've got a county commissioner, we've got Soil and Water, and we've got Lake Association members. So we've got Pokegama Lake and Cross Lake. And
is that the advisory? Or is that
They're on the
actual-
advisory.
Yeah.
The
and
actual.
so it's who's going to be from all of these on there.
Have the counties, have their county attorneys involved at all in this?
Yeah.
That might answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that was brought up and talked about. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lower St. Croix. We will get a work plan. I think Caleb will get it. And we need to pass the work plan. The way we're organized there, that will be the yearly work plan. That's how we're running it. I missed that meeting and I'll apologize, and I'm gonna blame it on my technology because I've missed a couple of meetings in the last couple of weeks because David would text me and say, like yesterday, "Are you coming to the meeting?" And I'd look, I would look and I go, "I don't know, but I must, I'll go." Okay, so I run in here kind of dirty and I get home and I look at my iPad and I got a meeting. But it was not showing up here. So the IT guys got me hooked up. Apparently I hadn't reauthorized my password or some darn thing that allowed me to get, but some stuff was on here and some wasn't. That's what really confused me. So I'll try to be less confused later. But anyway, I know from the Lower St. Croix, we have a work plan that is ready to go and needs approval by each entity in the organization. The East Central Regional Development Commission.
Yeah, we met in person, Mora. Extended the contract with MnDOT for the local human services transportation coordination plan due to some additional requirements they wanted. Approved a 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy to qualify our region for additional federal grants from EDA. Took 100,000 out of the RLF, that's what the revolving loan fund, yeah. To help shore up a $500,000 revolving loan fund through the American Recovery Planning Act. So they took 100,000 so they can, for the match. Something the North Branch Mayor brought up, that there's legislation being proposed that would take some zoning authority away from cities. There's a draft letter that could be, if anybody wants to look at it, Robert Voss forwarded it to me. So they're just looking for support. And the Personnel and Budget Committee is beginning to work on the next fiscal year budget. And that's about it.
All right.
You see, they're trying to take some zoning away from the cities.
Yeah.
What kind or what?
Well, they believe it's the pressure from profit developers. If I recall correctly, somebody wants to develop, they want the local government to take care of, roads, sewers, water, and everything, instead of the developer doing it and then having that part of the cost of doing business, like including it with the. So it's money related. I'm sure it would cut into their profit if they have to do it as a developer, as opposed to putting the burden on the cities. There's a draft letter I can forward to you.
Thank you. I'd like to read that.
NLX.
I didn't go.
All
It's
right.
in Ely, I think, or Chisholm.
Was it really?
The Senate didn't fund them, I heard yesterday.
What's that?
The Senate didn't fund them, NLX.
Pine County TAC, I went to that. That's basically a advisory committee for the Arrowhead bus that we have. We're in pretty good shape, but they have been experiencing a driver shortage. They are doing the same thing that everybody else. They have a hard time getting enough drivers, and we don't have enough drivers. The buses can't go, so they have actually shrunk some of the dial-a-ride hours because of that. They don't have a driver, they can't send a bus out. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is Phase really got contracted with the amount of work that they could take on, cleaning hotel rooms, that kind of stuff. That was a big part of Arrowhead's business, was transporting Phase people. So they're both kind of getting back up to, if Phase takes on some more work responsibility, then Arrowhead has to ramp up some of their transportation issues. So if you look at the total ride numbers and bump them up against 2019, we're down about half the amount of riders, but that half that they're down are really Phase contracted people. The dial-a-ride people are really still are back up. They're back. They're going on rides. I just got a thank you from somebody at the coffee shop this morning. That that's really helped my mom. The guy said, because she can't drive anymore. She still wants to go to coffee. She still wants to go shopping, and she lives in her own house, so it's helping them.
I live a couple miles out of town, and that bus goes past my house on a regular basis because we have somebody that needs services.
Okay.
So yeah, it's though it's a good.
Yep.
It's good.
Commercial recycling RFP review. We sat down and talked about it. We're going to put that on hold for a few months. We're going to take a look at what landfill is doing with their new hire who has some recycling experience, and maybe we can.
You took the job?
Well, I haven't seen him at work yet. But anyway, we're going to hold off on that. What we're looking at doing, just to feed you some seeds, is when Phase was doing all of our recycling, they offered some services to commercial businesses at a very reduced cost. And when they quit doing that, the hauler that has it can't afford to do it at that price. And if he offered it at the going rate price, the businesses can't afford it. So we're looking if there's some way we can put the two things together and make a service that's available to commercial businesses and make it work for whoever's taking the recycling away. So, but we're away. We put that on hold, and we're going to wait and see what comes out of the next few months. Housing HRA Authority Economic Development.
Yes, we had a meeting on the 27th of April. It was a good general business meeting. Had the operational reports, management reports, and I think the highlights are going to be the new management company, the SMR. I think Jolene Fowl was there, and she is good, don't you think? I mean, she's hit the ground running. And what I thought was interesting to me was she went through the buildings And she said the buildings are like in great shape. You know, compared to other buildings she's seen out there. So it's kind of that's a good report to get from a different source, you know, when the people have been living there. So the Red Path finished the 2019 and 2020 audits, and that bill was paid. That was $30,000. Oh, should back up. Kelly is now managing the investments for them and at the board of direction and stuff. So she does a report there too now. So that gets done. There was a presentation by in reference to the USDA rural development by Brian Leahy. And it's on, he's a loan specialist and it's for present single family housing programs. So they put that out there and how to qualify and all that. So they're, I don't know, did I miss anything major? Pretty much it.
No, the only thing I can add is, yeah, it was nice to see that Jolene went and walked the properties and seen, you know, what the county's investment is. And
yep,
there was just some question on, I guess, the value of them and the, when there was a recent appraisal and then if they're insured properly to protect the
you answered the question
value in case there was anything. Yeah, and how they were insured, whether they're a replacement or, so that she's gonna follow, is requesting copies and she's gonna follow up with the insurance and value of the county's investment there in those properties.
Yeah, thank you.
Pine County Wanderers.
Nice group of people.
That's fun, isn't it?
It is fun. It was very fun.
Did you get lunch?
I did. And I sat at the guys' table, which I found out was not something normal. So, but they were fun. But we talked a lot about broadband. And so that was their keynote even during lunch was, okay, so what about this and what about that? And to be able to tell them that that project isn't going to hit the road running was really hard because a lot of them live in that area where we were hoping to get the broadband set out right away with these federal funds. They are. So we talked about that. We talked, I gave them an invite to the Blue Zone meeting at the casino, and we talked about a few other things, but it's a good group of people and they're really interested and they want to keep interacting with what's going on in the community and how they can help. So it was a good afternoon.
How are the roads out there?
Well, it was in Dairyland. So I took 35 on the Wisconsin 35, which isn't all that great, but it's better than the blacktop or the gravel all the way through.
32.
Yeah, yeah.
Central Region EMS.
Yes, we had our meeting on the 29th. Had to, of course, re-elect our chair, vice chair, secretary. That stayed the same. I'm gonna go right to the opioids news that I thought was kind of surprising to me. But Pine County was I think one of the biggest users of the naloxone out of the.
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple other counties, but we went through a lot. And then I think I told you she only gets it's $50 a dose for that, you know, and that gets supplied through the grant through them, so the sheriff's office doesn't. We don't have to buy it, but it comes over here.
How many doses do we use?
500 is what we
in a year.
Yeah, this is.
So what was the next?
It's 11 counties was providing it.
Oh, so 500 for the 11 counties?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think. Oh, wait, no, I should read my own writing here. I know it's 250 doses at a pop, and I think they do it twice, but so that doesn't all come here, but when it comes in when she orders, so I don't know where we're at. If we haven't used up 500 yet, but. Then there was some discussion on the opioid funding update, which I've just explained to you before, on how they want to figure out what to do with, see if they want to try to grab a piece of that pie from the counties, the 11 counties are in there. But I'm going to take that to a committee first with HHS and see if that, before we come to the board with that, if that's all right. And then the other thing is Dr. Mari Thomas, medical director, she's retiring but she's gonna stay on and recruit the new medical director. Help recruit, so that's pretty much the highlights.
Good. Mille Lacs Band and Courts meeting.
Wally St. John actually called this meeting. And so it was Judge Wynn and Judge O'Flanagan, and Reese was there, and David, Steve and myself, and then Amy from Court Administrator. And he called it together to say thank you. He said, his cohorts that work in the different districts do not have a very good relationship with their counties, and that Pine County has a very good working relationship with them. So he thanked our judges for being fair. He thanked Reese for being fair. He said the treatment is, you're being treated as a human. It's not depending on your race, which he said is really nice. And he was very grateful. He did invite anybody who would ever like to go to one of their, they have the meetings for their membership. And it's usually at the casino with dinner and then a program to come out and to learn more about what they're doing and how they can help. He did talk about the hotel by the movie theater, that's not going to be reopening. And so they're trying to figure out if they can do housing there, something to do. Because I asked if it was because of workforce, and he said, yeah, partly, that it is hard for them to get the workforce also. We talked about, they want some land to be put into trust land. And so that's something that will be coming down the road later, I'm thinking. And it would be where their elders are. And so for me, it was, I know that they have, a lot of their elders have come home to live in their homes. But this is actually like an assisted living area for the elderly, or for their elders there, that they're asking to have put into trust land. We talked about the business incubator that's up and running. Sheena was at the meeting yesterday, and she is graduating today from that business incubator. So it's really good. She went to become a yoga instructor. Now she used that so that she can do her business, and they're helping her to learn how to do the business side of having a business. So it's going to be an awesome asset to our county to have that there. Anything else?
You did a bang up job.
Thanks.
Anybody got anything other?
I do.
Okay.
So I'm doing this leadership course, and it's 2 meetings a week and then like 5 hours of homework. And so it's pretty extensive, but I want to say that we have some really amazing leaders, talking to the other county, the people that we have working here, we have some really amazing leadership going on here. And I just want to say thank you. I didn't hear that everywhere. I think Kelly, I was talking to one of the county people came on first, and she said, as a commissioner, you've got to do your ARPA stuff online. And I'm going to go help a township do that before I go home today. But she laughs, but she said she has spent 2 days helping one township. And I said, well, do you have an auditor that can help? Because our auditor is amazing, and the things that she does to help these people. And she said, nope, they won't touch it. They won't help anybody. And I'm thinking, wow, just to have our leadership step out and help other people, and the way that we allow our employees to think outside the boxes and stuff, we're just really blessed. We're good. It's good.
Speaking of that, Kelly, do you know, did all the townships and cities get that report filed on time? Do you know?
Well, there's one still.
Okay.
For this afternoon. Yeah. But
No, I don't know. I reached out and I reached out.
Yeah.
And I only heard from maybe 10 that I helped. And then the rest.
You hope they got it done?
They got it done.
so from what I've heard, it's a nightmare, and the system's not accepting them, and things are crashing. And so then they extended the deadline. The deadline's been extended because they haven't been able to do the project that they have to do to be able to get their funding. So it's a nightmare.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I will concur. I lived the nightmare. I bet I spent 5 hours trying to approve Kelly to be able to submit our report. I think on the bright side, I put in a help request through the system. And I think what they must have done is just zeroed me out of the whole system, because the next day I tried to do the same thing again and it worked like magic.
Wow.
So if if people are having trouble, there is that help that apparently does something. But if I can just comment, Terry, on your leadership comment, I do think it's important for the board to see their values reflected in the staff. And so I think there is some credit to be shared that you are getting the leadership that you expect or that you encourage. And that's incumbent upon any leader, right? That the subordinates you have, if you're not seeing what you want, and I feel Josh should be here today because he's told me this, right? If you're not seeing what you expect, then it's up to you to make the change to get what you expect. So thank you for sharing that, Terry.
Any other? A lot of upcoming meetings. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony for a housing development in Pine City on Thursday at 10 o'clock, which is exactly the same time that I have a council on aging meeting, so I won't be able to go, but those are big milestones for towns.
You know, G on here, the AMC legislative update on Monday morning, Julia talked a little bit about that. I've attended that. It is very good.
They are really good, but
Yeah.
they always seem to have it on the second Monday,
Yeah.
which is the same time as
Yeah,
my
she's good.
my
She's really good.
landfill meeting.
Yeah.
You'll see her at District 1 too. She runs the show.
Any other business? If not, we'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.